All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Wednesday, March 6th of 2024. Looking ahead, we have an 8-game NBA main slate tonight with a Millie Maker. We have golf teeing off tomorrow morning, and then we have a 3-game NHL slate later this evening as well. So it should be a fun day of DFS. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS related questions. You get your questions in one of 3 ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. And third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. We do this show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do this show on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. So check it out and get your questions answered. But with that said, we are going to get the app pulled up here, and it looks like our first question came in yesterday from Run Through 'em, and it looks like somebody answered this for me here, but I do want to mention it as well. So appreciate you, Sean. So first question of the day was, is there a way to see in the Sims how often a player exceeds 5x times their value in NBA? So the first important thing is to understand, what is 5x someone's value, right? So value, the way we calculate it, if you hover over the column header, you'll see that you get a little pop-up. It's my projection divided by salary times 1,000 as well, which is one part that's not shown here. So if I were to look at Chris Dunn, who's 4,000 salary, well, 5x is going to be about 20 points here. So, that's like kind of the question. And then I'll go to Utah to like show it. So, okay. So I lowered his projection to 20. His value goes to 5. So basically the question is like, hey, how often does he exceed, 20 points? And that's a good question, right? And you can look at it a couple different ways. The player percentiles are going to give you a pretty good picture of that. So his 25th percentile is 22.8 points. So that means that 75% of the time he is meeting or exceeding 22.8 points. So just, whatever the percentile is, think about it like the opposite numbers. Like 99th percentile is a top 1% outcome. 75th percentile is a top 25% outcome. So his 25th percentile is something he achieves 75% of the time. So think about it that way, but that is an easy way to do it. You could also pull up his graph and just see, kind of eyeball how many of his outcomes are above 20 points. You just like have to do a little bit of addition when this loads, as far as what you are seeing. Like you can see exactly how many times he gets to 20. And then if it's not loading for you, just do a hard refresh, Control-Shift-R or Command-Shift-R, give the app a once over here, and then it should pull up the second time. So always got to do some troubleshooting. And then boom, graph comes right up. So I can see that he has a ton of outcomes over 20 points here, right? So like that's another way. You just have to add each individual bar, but the percentiles do a pretty good job of giving you a solid picture. So I would stick with those. All right. Good question to get us started. Next question here from J. Sams Jr. We have 2 of them, so I'm just going to put them together here. And first question was, how can you tell what the min cash line is going to be for a specific slate? Truth is, like, you probably can't. I think on slates where there are more value, like tonight, I think value is going to give you a pretty good indication of what the slate is going to be like. I would just include this as a step in your kind of like, I like to say like getting familiar with the slate. Like, hey, I log on today. I want to get a feel for the slate. Like, what's the best way to do that? Well, like one of the best ways to do that, in my opinion, is like literally just come in here and sort by value and then just kind of start there. And then you just kind of go down this rabbit hole of like familiarizing yourself with all the players in games today. So like the reason I like to do that is like, okay, I sort by value. I see high value on Utah. I see high value on Philly. I see high value on Cleveland, and then a little less on like Chicago. So like that is kind of the first place I would start today. And what I would do is go to Utah, sort by and the status column should help you out. So Laurie Markkanen is out today. Walker Kessler is out. Keontae George is out. Taylor Hendricks is out. If you don't know these guys by name, look at their salaries, right? 8,000 salary players out, 5,000 salary players out, 6,700, 5,300. This is where all the value is coming from today. And then, spend a little bit extra time looking at these guys and, figuring out, okay, this makes sense to me, why I'm seeing so many value plays, because all these high salary guys are out. And then you can do the same thing for Philly. You could do the same thing for Cleveland. So I really like to take that approach when familiarizing myself with the slate. I think that's a really solid place to start. All right. Second question was, when the player projections drop, are all of their projections based on their 50th percentile outcome? So the projections that you see are the means from all of the sims we have of a person. You can see this a little bit better in something like NHL, where the players are very far from normally distributed. So, in sports where players' range of outcomes are wide and the variance is really high, if I go and look at Nathan McKinnon here, right, he's projected for 20.99. This is his mean across all of our game sims for this game, right? But you're going to see that his graph is a little bit skewed to the right. Well, what happens in these right skewed data sets is that it pulls the mean more than it does the median. So if I go and look at his projection, 20.99, compare that to his 50th percentiles. 50th percentile is his actual his median outcome here. That's 19.5. So you could see about a 1.5 fantasy point difference between these two values. And then those will be to NHL for that demo. All right. Good question there. Next question here from Thrash. And question says, when sorting contest simulation metrics, what does ROI standard deviation exactly represent? The standard deviation of the ROI. Just want to make sure I'm understanding what it's representing. Search frequently asked questions and couldn't find anything to clarify. Notice a lot of top pro lineups when studying usually have high ROI standard deviation along with raw ROI. Okay, good question here. So, you got to think about it like this. When you run a contest sim, when we're running it 100,000 times, the lineup itself is going to have a payout distribution, right? Like imagine the player graphs that you see. What we're doing is we're summarizing how the players do across 5,000 game sims. Well, hey, the lineup is going to get a distribution as well across 100,000 contest sims. So what we're doing is we're basically giving you that information in the form of the standard deviation of the lineup. And that is what we're representing there. And so typically the way you could think about it is like a higher standard deviation, kind of the more boom bust the lineup is going to be, and a lower standard deviation, a little bit, the lineup could be a little more consistent. So like I use the example of like, hey, you could have two lineups that are both 100% ROI, but one of them cashed three times and one of them won the contest three times and never cashed again in an extreme example. The other lineup only won the contest one time, but had a lot more high percentile finishes that helped it achieve that same ROI number. The standard deviation of the first lineup that won three times and never cashed again is going to be a lot higher than the second lineup. So there's definitely a trade-off. I could see why a lot of pros have high standard deviation lineups, because I think that, if you're a top player, you're probably approaching DFS with this, if you're not first, you're last build mentality, just because so much of the first place prize, so much of the prize pool goes to first place. There's like a huge percent to first, right? And you can see it. I mean, just go into the contest tab and then click over to all contests and look at this percent to first column. Like the Millie Maker tonight is 44% to first place. Like that's absolutely insane. So this is why, top pros understand this and they're building lineups with very high upside, because they're trying to achieve this, 0.01% outcome and take down the contest. So that makes a lot of sense to me as to why you're seeing that. All right. Good question so far. Going to hit this next one. Question from Run Through 'em said, is there a way to set a rule to at least have 5 players from games with over a 220 point total? So I did get back to him, but I do want to just mention this. So, you can't do this. And the way you would be able to do it if you could is go to rule type, go to group, and then go to method automatic. And then you would say use at least, you said 5. And then what you would do is group by game. And then what you would want is like a team total summary stat, basically, but you would want like a game total, right? So like we don't have the over-unders as a statistic in this drop down. I could definitely put it in as like a feature request to let the team know that like, hey, people are asking for that. But what I would imagine is like we would probably do team totals. I don't know how we would do game totals, but I'm sure the team could probably figure it out. But basically, if you want to do rules like that, you just have to add this stat requirement and then see what's available in the drop down. But if you still wanted to do that rule, you could do it as a manual rule instead. So then what I would do is go to group, manual, use at least 5. And then I would just go to those games and then I would check in the players. So what it would look like is like, oh, okay, I'm going to, check in these guys from this game and then go to the next game, go to the next game. Might take a little bit longer, but that is how you do it if you want to do it right now. All right. Good question there. Next question here. Question says, if you build lineups mid-afternoon, is it best to rebuild lineups again right before the slate starts or just refresh the build to get the latest projections? So if you're playing NBA, I would basically never stick with lineups that you built hours prior to lock. And the reason for that is because 2 things. One, a lot of injury news comes out closer to the slate starting. And 2, starting lineups are usually not out until within 30 minutes of lock if you're lucky. So, the game times are spread out across 3.5 hours tonight. So we won't know, who's starting in the later games until closer to those game start times. So not only should you build closer to the slate locking, you should also make sure you're around to take advantage of any late swap opportunities, players getting rolled out, etc. here. So that's why it's really important to wait in NBA. I'd say one of the best things that you can do is whatever games are starting at a particular time slot, make sure that these starting lineups are confirmed. So they're going to have green check marks next to the teams. And then if you filter for the teams, when the lineup is confirmed, you're going to see check marks in the status column for which actual players are confirmed in the starting lineup. So like those are your 2 key indicators. I would say if you can wait till like the Orlando Washington game, till the starting lineups are out to do your, quote unquote, like first build of the night before you late swap, then I would do that. So that is where I would suggest you start. All right. Question from Marcus. Question says, is there a way I can import my DraftKings player pool over to Fanduel? So I did answer this one in the support channel, but happy to mention it again. So what you could do here is you can clone a build within a slate here. So like I'm on the DraftKings 4 p.m. basketball main slate here. So let's say that, I put in like some filters here, right? I put in like some projection filters. I put in some minimax exposures. Maybe I even uncheck some people here. Now, if I wanted to carry this over to another build, I could do that by right-clicking on the build I'm on and then using the clone option. It's going to carry over all your active rules, all your active filters, all your minimax exposures, projection adjustments, players you've unchecked, etc. You can only do that within a slate. You cannot do that across sites or across slates, unfortunately. But that does sound like a pretty cool, iteration to the app here. And I can see how if you're playing like, 4 different main slates, you'd probably want the same player pool across all of them if that's something that you're doing. So I could see that being an update, a future update to our app. All right. Good question so far. Going to keep the show rolling. Next one here. Question says, for League of Legends, it feels near impossible to stay unique. That said, would you try to do your best to stay unique or try to optimize what the best lineup might be, even if it's going to likely be split 10 ways? Okay, so this is a good question. Sometimes there's a saying people say is like, it's easy to build a unique lineup because you could just build a very bad lineup and it can be unique. So you always want to kind of try and find like a happy medium of lineups that aren't going to be too heavily duplicated, but still have a good chance of actually winning your contests. So I've talked to like Will about this, who's one of our data scientists. And, he's really big into esports. He's really big into MMA. So he plays sports where duplication is a big factor. And, he said like, hey, I just try and stay like under 5 dupes and kind of just be happy with whatever happens there. So whenever I use GeoMean or any type of like product ownership form, I typically calculate it as if I'm shooting for like 20 dupes or 10 dupes, because I don't think it's like a, I don't think product ownership is like everything. Like it's the alpha and the omega. I think that, it's a tool to help you to manage your duplication and play unique lineups. But there's also, roster construction considerations. There's also salary considerations. So I think there's things that you can do besides product ownership and GeoMean to help you be more unique. So maybe you're only using one of those things, and I would encourage you to branch out and try other things as well. So, mess around with salary filters. Maybe you don't play, max salary lineups. Maybe you run a build on optimizer mode and you see what the cash captain is going to be, or, the most likely team to be stacked, and you try and, limit your shares of like those specific constructions in order to play lineups that maybe the field isn't putting together, even though the ownership might be higher. Hey, maybe just the way you're constructing these lineups is different than what most people are going to be doing on this slate. So I think that those are options for you to try and get unique through roster construction, through salary constraints, and through geometric mean. And then all three of those things together might help you to find a happy medium there. But one thing that you can do is just go into a past slate and use our contest flashback tool and study what, other players did, right? So if I go back to this March 5th LPL slate from yesterday, and then I go to contests, go to all contests, I'm going to go to the flagship here. It looks like the max number of entries is 70. So then I'm going to open up the players tab. I'm going to open up users. First, I want to see, did people max 30 or more lineups here? So then I'm going to right click on entries. I'm going to go down to greater than or equal, and then I'm going to put 30. Now I'm going to sort by sim ROI and say, hey, who had the highest sim ROI portfolio? And it looks like it was B. Gresseth, who's like a DFS pro here. So 44 unique lineups, average dupes is 2. Go in and look at his lineups and see what he's doing that makes him unique. And you can kind of get some ideas here, right? One thing that stands out to me is that, his sim average score is a lot lower than like the next two people here. So it looks like he's sacrificing some projected score for uniqueness here, as opposed to the next guy down. Hey, he's even his portfolio grades out really well here, right? So this is just to show that there's more than one path to victory here, and you can get to good, solid lineups a couple different ways. So studying players who are maxing out the contest, the biggest contests in the lobby, are one of the best ways to do that, especially if they're still grading out well in the sims. All right, good question there. Next question here from Teddy. He said, hey, Andrew, for PGA, if I'm adjusting SaberSim's projected ownership numbers, should I rebuild field lineups? Also, if I'm playing 20 max and single entry / 3 max, should I have 2 different sets of field lineups? Okay, good question here. So I would rebuild I would build a custom set basically of field lineups here. And we actually cover that in one of our YouTube videos. So I'm just going to pull that up on screen here. That way I could show you what video to reference as you're going through this. So if you go over to our YouTube channel, which I'm pulling up right now, and you go over to playlists, and then you go down to understanding contest sims, there's this video using custom ownership with contest sims, with which if you are adjusting ownership projections, you are basically doing this. So this video walks you through using custom ownership, building custom fields, setting up your contest sims correctly, and then running them and then using those for your actual lineups. So I would check out that tutorial. I just dropped it in the chat here, or you can find it on our YouTube channel, but that is definitely the video that you want to reference. And then in regards to your second question here, would I have 2 different sets of field lineups? I guess it depends if you think that, you can make adjustments that are worth having different sets of field lineups. Like I would be, kind of double checking yourself and making sure that like, hey, I think so-and-so is going to be X percent owned in 20 maxes, but I think they're going to be higher or lower in their single entry and 3 maxes. And like, are you right when you're making those adjustments? And if you are, great, have different sets of field lineups. Like, we do, right? We have 13 sets of field lineups for NFL, for MLB, for NBA. Probably something we're going to end up building out for golf if we don't have it already. Okay, so right now we just have one set of ownership projections. So I could see us building it out eventually here. If you think you could build different sets of field lineups, like, more power to you. Like, go for it. All right, good question there. Question from Sam. Question says, besides the SaberScore Pro videos, are there any other videos where Matt talks about adjusted ownership? Good question. Let's jump over to the YouTube channel and let's find out, because I don't know off the top of my head here. And we can get you an answer to that question. We do have one video in our support library, which I can show you here, but let's go. So go to the YouTube channel, go to the search bar, and then just type in adjusted ownership. So some videos of me talking about it here in office hours. I don't see anything else related to it. So I would say that probably the pro videos are going to be your best source here, because it looks like it's just all right. So if you go to SaberSim, you go to the top right corner, you go to help. This will open up our support library. And then within this library, if you go down and you go to frequently asked questions, you go to view more, you type in the top search bar. It's actually right here. It says, what is adjusted ownership? And then this is also a good video to check out if you're trying to learn more about it. One of my favorite things to do is compare adjusted ownerships between different sports. So like if I go back to today and then I go and look at the highest owned players for NBA, and I look at their adjusted ownerships, they're either, very, very close or even less than their actual ownerships. But if I go to NHL and go and look at the highest owned players, then their adjusted ownerships are typically higher than their projected ownerships. And that is telling you that, hey, these players are very high variance. And you can see that by pulling up their range of outcomes. And what adjusted ownership is doing, it's looking at their ownership, it's looking at their range of outcomes, and then giving them a score and saying, hey, these guys are really high variance. You might want to be careful with how many of them you play in your lineups. So that's what adjusted ownership is doing. And you can see the differences between these different sports very, very well. All right. Jumping over to the YouTube chat. That was our last question in the Discord. Question from Neil. Hi, Andrew. Can you tell me how many points it will take to get first place tonight in the NBA Minimax contest? I'd like to optimize my lineups and shoot for first place. So I had a really similar question earlier. One of the things that I think you can do here is go to NBA for tonight, set up a default build. Okay. So I'm going to reset everything I did here because I was messing around with some stuff for cloning. And then I'm just going to run 500 lineups. I'm going to set my sliders for the biggest contest on the night, 150 max, largest number of entries, right? I'm going to make my 2 adjustments, 2 projections to unlock the build lineups button. And then I'm going to build lineups. So now what I think that you should do is just come in here and sort by 99th percentile for the lineups. So in case you guys didn't know, we have player percentiles for players, showing like, hey, in 1% of our sims, Giannis scores 90 or more points, right? Well, we're also doing lineup percentiles as well. So what I could do is go and change my sorting metric from SaberScore, go to our percentile drop down, and then go to 99th. So what's happening here is we're building the lineups. We're putting the lineups in the pool. After the pool of lineups are built, we're going back into the sims, and then we're saying, hey, when I look at this combination of 8 players, how did they do across all the sims? And then we are creating a lineup distribution similar to we were talking about the payout distributions. Well, the lineups have a distribution as well. And then we're summarizing that with these lineup percentiles. So a lineup 99th percentile is the score that this lineup achieves 1% of the time. So if you're like, hey, I just want to optimize for the highest score possible and nothing else, then hey, maybe you want to use something like a lineup percentile as your sorting metric. And then you can come in here and then you can see that, hey, this lineup scores 361.3 points 1% of the time. And this is the highest scoring 99th percentile lineup in our set of lineups. So that is maybe something that you want to check out, Neil. All right. Question from Ryan. Andrew, you should do some lineup review content for NBA playoffs like with the NFL. That's super interesting. Yeah. Max and I did one video at the beginning of the year here. If you guys missed it, it's over on our YouTube channel under reviewing past slates with contest flashback or in our how to beat NBA DFS playlist here. So we did a bunch of videos for NFL. We did one for NBA and we did one for hockey, showing just what good contest flashback processes look like for both of those sports. So I know Max is like super busy right now. So I don't know how much NBA he's playing, if he's even, tuned into what's going on. So I think that's a big part of it as well. But if you guys haven't seen it, check out our NBA review video here on the channel. All right. Scrolling here, looks like that was our last question. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Had a bunch of people tuning in today. So appreciate you guys. Hope you guys got some useful tips in regards of how to use SaberSim, how to best attack slates going forward. So I will be right back here tomorrow, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. I'll see you all. Thanks. Bye.